All right, Ms. Canning, you think you're about ready to get started here? Perfect.
Please start us off, Mr. Holmes.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the City of Boise Hearing Examiner public hearing. Just a few things to start off with tonight for tonight's proceeding, or this afternoon's proceeding. First off, everyone from the public entering the hearing virtually has been automatically muted and cannot speak. As the item you're interested in comes up for discussion, you'll be called upon and unmuted. There is a chat function in Zoom. This is not part of the record and should be only used if technical difficulties arise. So our procedures for public hearings begin first with the presentation from the planning team. Next, we'll go to the appellant and or applicant, and then the representative of the Registered Neighborhood Association. This will be followed by questions from the hearing examiner. And then after that, we will proceed to public testimony. First, we'll start with those that are in person, then those who signed up on the sign-up sheet in advance. Finally, we'll go to anyone who raises their hand virtually. So if you're attending virtually through your telephone, you can type *9 to raise your hand. Each speaker should state their name and address for the record before their public testimony. And then each member of the public is allowed up to 3 minutes for testimony. We are strict with that time as it is limited in code. And then finally, the applicant or appellant is allowed time for rebuttal, after which the hearing will be closed and the hearing examiner will deliberate and render a decision. And with that, Ms. Canning, the floor is yours.
All right, I'll call this meeting to order. It's March 26th, just a little bit after 3 p.m. Just so you know, I am an independent decision maker hired by the City of Boise and approved by the City Council. I make decisions on variances and administrative appeals. Any request to reconsider these decisions must be formally requested in writing pursuant to City Code. I think tonight we have variances. All three of them are variances, as I recall. And so those, you can talk to staff if you desire to move forward with that. We only use a consent agenda to adopt findings related to previous decisions. All items that are placed on the consent agenda are approved without further public comment. And for items not on the consent agenda, we will hold a full public hearing in the order just detailed a few minutes ago by staff. And thank you all for coming and attending tonight. It's so nice outside. It was probably hard to come indoors, but I appreciate you being here. And for the record, I, Anna Canning, will be the hearing examiner rendering decisions tonight. First order of business is to accept the minutes. I've reviewed them and accept them for the record. Now we'll move on to new business. The first item before us is CBA 2429, and we will hear from staff.
Thank you, Ms. Canning. I will be covering from Jesse on this item, but it should look familiar to you. This is item CVA 24-29. This was a variance that was heard back in December to exceed the height maximum located at 618 Allenbaugh Street. This is 5.494 acres in the I-1 zone. The subject property contains an existing dairy that has operated in this location since the 1930s and has been expanded many times over the years, including a couple height exceptions for adjacent silos. The property is surrounded by commercial and office uses to the north, residential uses to the east and south, and then industrial uses to the west. And so, as explained in the past hearing and the project report, the applicant is proposing to remove an existing 48-foot storage silo in the northwest corner of the property and then replace it with an approximately 78-foot tall storage silo. This would match the height of the 3 adjacent silos. All of these are located outside of required setbacks, and the variance is only for the height exception. All other requirements will be met, and additional design review will be required on this. Back at the December 18th hearing, this item was deferred and additional information was requested concerning hardships with the site. So this is namely potential water saving in the proposed location. The applicant has submitted a memo, which you should have received with additional information, and they're also here kind of summarized on your screen. In conclusion, the planning team's recommendation for approval still does stand, and happy to answer any questions you may have.
I have no questions.
Thanks.
Okay, now we'll hear from the applicant. You don't have to repeat what you said last time. It's still part of the record. Okay.
Yes, please. Yeah. And I can advance it with this, or you'll take care of it? Ah, it does. Into the
I like the cows. They looked happy on the first screen.
Yeah. Yeah, so this just reiterates what the planning representatives already talked about. So want to focus on two things related to this. Challenges with the site, and it's really twofold. One is related to the site itself. So as you can see, it's surrounded by other industrial, residential, and offices. We've got two aspects to the site. One on the eastern side is where the plant sits. The one on the west of North Allenbaugh is where we've got employee parking, but we also have our waste treatment facility for the plant as well. So when we take a look at possible locations for silos, what I want to talk about on this slide is we really can't put the raw silos across the street on the west side of Allenbaugh. And the main reason is it's in vicinity of the wastewater treatment facility. And so the potential for product contamination could happen. So when we take a look at the site, that's one of the challenges we have on the parcel of land. So on the next one, I want to talk about the hardships created related to within the production facility. So you see there in the red box where our existing silos are located. That puts part of the facility is where we receive the raw milk into the facility. And that represents what we call the raw side of our production facility. The green portion is where we actually create the finished product. We case it, we warehouse it. And that's considered the pasteurized side of the facility. So we don't have any space to put additional silos, numbers of silos into the area by the red box. It really is around how can we go higher. And then the other thing is that the processes within the facility are regulated by the FDA and requiring a separation of raw and pasteurized. So the other place we looked at potentially putting silos as follow-up to the meeting the last time was along the southern, where you see the blue boxes, because there is space there. We would have to put like lower height silos in to meet the height variance, or not needing a variance for height. But what it would require is for us to receive the raw milk in the red box, to transfer it via pipes to the raw silo in the blue, and then to use it back in pasteurization to transfer it back over the green area. And that's the portion that's in violation of the FDA regulations because of the potential for product contamination of raw versus pasteurized. The other issue we have by placing silos on that southern in that blue area is to the east of that, what we looked at, we actually have stacks for our boilers. And by putting silos there, it would put us in violation of our air permit, and we would not be able to run the facility based on that. So those are the challenges with the site related to process, as well as looking at a different location. And lastly, when we take a look at the larger silo and placing it, we've talked about the challenges around the location and the height. What it allows us to do is to minimize the amount of water usage. We've calculated to be 300,000 gallons on an annual basis. The other thing it does is it also reduces the city wastewater discharge. So reduction in incoming water related to our cleaning practices also reduces the amount of discharge we would make to the city of Boise. As we look at putting the silos on the south side, that would even require more water usage because you're having to clean the transfer pipes to the silos and back, but we're still limited by the FDA regulations. Okay, one. So any questions?
I don't. Thank you
Thank
so
you.
much for all the additional information. I really appreciate the fact that you came back with the best management practices and the water conservation numbers. And I appreciate you waiting since December too. I know it's been a while for you, so I appreciate that. All right, now we will hear from anyone representing the neighborhood association. I see no hands. This is I'll now open the public hearing. Is there anyone that wants to testify? There's no one on the sign up sheet. I see no hands. Is there anyone online who would like to testify? Mr. Holmes is shaking his head no. And I don't think we need a rebuttal by the applicant. So I'll close the public hearing. As I said before, I really appreciate your patience in waiting since December and appreciate the new information. I think the information on the best management practices as well as safety concerns supports a number of the findings for the variance as it being in the public interest. And with regard to the first finding, the unique characteristics of the site, I thought a lot about the existing silos and the conditional use permits you have for those. And those are non-conforming structures now. And I believe that those non-conforming structures provide a particular unique situation for this property. So with that, if staff could maybe just bump up the findings with what I've said tonight. And with that, we will approve this variance. So thank you so much for your patience and the additional information. It was very helpful. Thank you. All right. And as they are escaping, we will move on to the second item. Which is CVA 2433, Noble Rock Development.
Good evening, good afternoon, Ms. Canning. Thank you. This item should also look familiar to you as it is a variance request to deviate from the access and connectivity requirements to install detached curb, gutter, and sidewalk associated with the conditional use permit modification to a previously approved planned unit development on 0.33 acres in the R1C residential traditional zone located at 12685 West McMillan Road. Previously, under the Legacy Zoning Code, the applicant received approval of PUD 23-19, which was comprised of a duplex and 2 detached single-family style dwellings. The applicant intends to modify the site layout of this approved CUP on the left and attach 2 of the units for a 2 duplex style type of development as shown on the right. Under the Legacy Zoning Code, the existing 7-foot wide attached sidewalk was allowed to remain. However, the modern zoning code requires all new development within the R1C zone and adjacent to an arterial roadway, in this case, McMillan Road, to provide a 10-foot wide detached sidewalk. Additionally, 10-foot wide landscape buffer would be required to accommodate street trees due to the presence of overhead power lines here. There's evidence that a hardship exists on the subject property. It's part of the Ladera Park No. 2 subdivision, which was reported in 1995 and is a 2-lot residential subdivision with both lots fronting towards McMillan Road. This subdivision was also approved under the Legacy Zoning Code and allowed for, or I'm sorry, I said that twice, allowed for the construction of the 7-foot wide attached sidewalk. The subdivision is really the only area along the southern side of McMillan Road that's oriented in this way. This orientation, as well as the vehicular access and pedestrian improvement, would not be allowed unless paired with a variance under the modern zoning code when it's adjacent to an arterial roadway, as the modern zoning code requires the installation of that 10-foot wide detached sidewalk along an arterial road, and then for vehicular access to be provided by a frontage road. Most surrounding subdivisions in this area contain non-buildable lots that act as landscape buffers adjacent to McMillan Road, or are oriented towards the south away from it, with the rears of the property fronting towards McMillan, meaning the potential for redevelopment in a manner that would require the installation of detached sidewalks along McMillan Road is unlikely. Shown here is a map of McMillan Road with the red lines showing where the installation of detached sidewalks may create nonconformities with existing structures due to the installation of those detached sidewalks, changing the point from from which the front setback is measured, which is the back of the future detached sidewalk rather than the property line. You'll notice these parcels abutting McMillan Road are either oriented away from McMillan, are skinny, non-buildable landscape buffer common lots, or contain structures that would become non-conforming with the construction of detached sidewalks. All of these factors limit the potential for redevelopment in a manner that would require detached sidewalks to be installed along McMillan Road. Shown here is the approval criteria for variances. As described within the project report, all of these findings have been met. In conclusion, the planning team recommends approval of the variance request, and I will stand for any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Dennis. Just to verify, I asked this last month, but I want to make sure it's still true. The previous approval is still valid, correct? Okay. All right, with that, we will move on to, I did leave the public hearing open, so we'll go through the list of folks, and see who wants to testify. So we can now hear from the applicant. And were you online last time? Is that right?
I was,
Yeah,
yes.
okay.
Name's Jeff Reedy. I'm 3426 South Sugarloaf Place in Eagle, Idaho. We have. Matt, do you have my PowerPoint? Got it go. For this variance, Matt's explained it pretty well. The property is located on the south side of McMillan Road between Eagle and Cloverdale, and it's pretty much the only remaining infill property for like a 3-mile stretch between Locust Grove and 5 Mile. As far as that's a picture of the lot right there showing the curb. So the original approval was for 4 units, and it was consisting of 2 single-family homes and a duplex. Originally, I was going to put my daughter and my grandson in one of the separated units, but they've since moved to Florida. And so I submitted to put a duplex in, and that allowed me to put 2-car garages in every unit, which really increases the livability for people that are, will be staying and living in those homes. So the variance request, the site plan was approved originally in August, and then the minor modification was submitted in November, just after this code changed. All of the sidewalks along McMillan Road are placed in a 7-foot wide strip along the back of the sidewalk. Let me get to the code change now requires 8-foot planter strip backed by a 10-foot sidewalk. In the previous codes have all allowed a less restrictive requirement to promote the development of infill properties. And the new code, I've searched for it, and there's no references to infill in there anymore, which to me makes the variances very important to people trying to complete these kind of leftover lots that are around the town. This is 2 pictures, one of the current sidewalk and one of possibly what would happen with the jog sidewalk being put in there. The jog sidewalk with the planter strip, it really doesn't allow for much room to even really have a planter strip. And it, the jog is just going to be the only one that's there for miles and miles along that area of McMillan. This is a picture I took from where the center of the sidewalk would be facing, to the east, actually. You can see the existing sidewalk, but that's pushed back and then the other sidewalk's made. It, kind of shows that this jog is going to be right by the end of a fence and a power pole sitting there. And to me, it seems like it might be potentially dangerous jog for people walking. The children in the neighborhood ride their bikes on the sidewalk because there's 3 schools in the neighborhood. And to have to do the zigzag with electric bikes and whatever else is going on there now, it just seems like it's something that could be a problem potentially. Planning department review, they recommend approval. One of their statements was basically it just retaining the straight sidewalk provides a more consistent, predictable development pattern with the surroundings. And so lastly, I just have some conclusions I put down. So the minor modification provides improved site plan with 2-car garage for each unit, which provides better livability for the residents. All the properties along McMillan Road have already been developed into large subdivisions. Any future redevelopment is extremely likely, meaning that the 3-mile stretch of the existing sidewalk is going to remain there for many years to come. The sidewalk jog will likely be the only one ever created in this long stretch along McMillan Road. Construction of the detached sidewalk in this one location doesn't provide a cohesive connection to any other sidewalk that's nearby on McMillan Road. And then lastly, the jog sidewalk, it may create an unnecessary safety condition for pedestrians and young bicyclists. And the current sidewalk provides a continuous flow for pedestrians and bicyclists without causing any impact to public safety. Yeah, that's all I got.
Thank you.
All right.
We'll come back to you in a second here. Is there anyone representing a neighborhood association? I see no hands. I'll now open the public hearing, starting with the sign-up sheet, of which there is none. No one signed up. Is there anyone here from the public that wants to testify that didn't sign up? I see no hands. Is there anyone online? Mr. Holmes is shaking his head no. All right. So I'm going to talk about this for a second, then I'll give you a chance to rebut. Mr. Dennis, can you bring up the findings? Findings. Ms. Reed, I don't disagree with the logic you've presented, but I'm charged with looking at the code and what the code says. And the new code with regard to detached sidewalks is very clear. It is in probably 20, 30 places where they say it needs to be a detached sidewalk. Every zoning district, it says it needs to be a detached sidewalk, except for MX5. So it's very clear that the city wanted detached sidewalks. Now, it used to be that you only had to do detached sidewalk on a new subdivision. By putting it in every single zoning district, the intent was they would get it piecemeal. So the argument that this is going to be piecemeal, unfortunately, I think is exactly what the zoning code anticipated. I deal with this every day on the other jobs I do, and I am empathetic, but I don't see that the characteristics of the site warrant attaching the sidewalk. And I also think that it would provide a right or special privilege, because everyone else with an application going through the projects right now, whether they be infill or not, they're being asked to do the same thing that you're being asked to do. So with that, you may come up and provide a rebuttal if you'd like.
I don't know what to say. I know you look at the code and that's your job to look at the code, but like I said, there's always been things in the code to make judgments on individual pieces of property. And they say, oh yeah, it's going to be piecemeal. This code is going to change 50 more times before anything else ever starts along there. And it could be taken out. Anything else could happen. So we need to use judgment in these cases where this is one little thing stuck in the middle of, miles and miles of this subdivisions that are done and never going to change. I mean, I can't imagine it could be 100 years before anything along McMillan Road gets a detached sidewalk like this.
But again, all developers are facing the same things right now, and on very similar projects of very similar size. So I just think, I truly feel it would be granting a special right or privilege.
Well, that being said, I already have an approval to have the existing sidewalk there. And to just say because, oh, we're changing these two structures to make things better, why that would have to change, it's just not logical to me. Of course, I'm very logical.
I would, I won't dispute that. And
Sure.
I am very glad that you got a previous approval that you can work with. I know it's not exactly what you would like to do now, but you still have that.
It
And
just seems odd that it's okay to do it. In one thing it's being said, it's okay to do that. I'm being told it's okay to do that.
you have a
And then I'm being
you're
told it's not
vested-
okay to do it. So you got to understand where I'm coming from.
I
It just doesn't
understand.
make any sense whatsoever.
I understand. I
So
understand.
that's all I can say.
Okay.
Thanks.
With that, I will close the public hearing. And can you put them back up, Matt? And for the record, I am denying the variance on the grounds that there's not an undue hardship because of the characteristics of the site, very similar to all the other infill sites within the city. And in particular, that granting the variance will provide a right of special privilege because so many other properties are having to comply with the same code. And then I think what you have on the other ones is fine. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
All right. There we go. And with that, we will move on to our third project, which is CBA 2411. And we will start with staff.
Good afternoon, Ms. Canning. The item before you is CVA 24-00011, variances to encroach into the interior and street side setbacks to deviate from the required backup space and to deviate from the access and connectivity requirement and streetscape standards on 0.07 acres in an R2 residential compact zone. The subject application, CVA 24-00011, contains multiple variances, such as variances to encroach into the interior and street side setbacks, to deviate from the required backup space, and to install a 5-foot attached sidewalk along Hartman Street in order to build a new house on a residential small lot. The initial proposal included a variance to retain the existing 4-foot attached sidewalk along Ever Street. However, due to recent ACHD correspondence, the planning director has waived the requirement for a detached sidewalk along Ever Street as long as a 5-foot attached sidewalk is installed. The subject property is narrow, 25-foot wide corner lot of record of the Lamberson Addition subdivision. New residential developments on substandard original lots of records and lots less than 3,500 square feet must comply with Boise City Code Section 1104-0304 regarding residential small lots, which requires developments to undergo further design review and require compliance with setbacks of the applicable zoning district, parking, and right-of-way improvements. There is a hardship for the street side and parking variance request. The narrow 25-foot corner lot limits development options, making full compliance with street side and backup space standards impracticable. As shown on your screen and described in your project report, the buildable area measuring 5 by 60 feet and existing structure on site make it impossible to fit a livable and safe home with functioning parking while meeting the intent of the development code. Additionally, with the existing house built 24 feet from the rear property line, abutting a 16-foot wide alley, the site is also not able to meet the 22 feet of backup space and the rear setback. So a 2-foot reduction in backup space for the required parking surface is required for the site to meet 1 off-street parking space for single-family residences as required by the code. The portion of the application proposing a 1-foot encroachment into the interior side setback introduces a new nonconformity and does not constitute a hardship. The proposed interior side encroachment is not necessary for the new house to meet health, safety, and living standards, and the reduced setback will constitute a privilege that is not available to other properties within the same zoning district. With the approval of the variance request to the street side setback, the buildable lot area becomes 16 feet by 60 feet, 16 feet wide by 60 feet long, which could accommodate a new home. The applicant is also proposing to construct an attached sidewalk along.
Ms. Mbabe, just because there's so many here, do you mind if I ask you a question as we go along?
Yes.
Is that okay? Can
Yeah.
you go back to the last one? So did you verify that the existing structure is 4 foot 6 inches?
So the applicant submitted multiple site plans, and even with the existing structure being at 4 foot 6 inches, it is still a structure that meets code because it's less than 500 square feet and less than 14 feet in height. So it's allowed an encroachment per code,
Okay, but it is 4 feet 6 inches.
according to the plan submitted
Okay.
by the applicant.
Okay, thank you.
Shall I move along?
Yes, I'm sorry.
The applicant is proposing to construct an attached sidewalk along Hardman Street. Typically, the construction of a single-family residence does not trigger streetscapes improvements. However, because the subject property is a residential small lots, street improvements are required. As mentioned in the project report, the existence of an attached sidewalk is not an undue hardship due to the characteristic of the site. A detached sidewalk at this location will not decrease the buildable area, nor will it affect the location of the proposed home. Furthermore, the application provided a site plan on Hartman Street that showed that the frontage could accommodate the required improvements. Comments were provided by Parks and Recreation from the associated legal non-conforming application that also indicated that the existing trees will not be affected by the improvements. As shown on the slide, the power pole cited by the applicant as a hardship is located closer to the street and will be part of the landscape buffer. Therefore, there's ample space within the 13-foot unimproved right-of-way to accommodate the minimum 8-foot landscape buffer and a 5-foot sidewalk without requiring the removal of trees and relocating utilities. Building a detached sidewalk will not create non-conformities, as there are multiple examples across the city where such improvements have occurred, and the applicant will need to work with ACHD when it comes to the design of the sidewalk.
And to your knowledge, has the applicant talked to ACHD at all about that area?
The applicant has mentioned that they reached out to ACHD regarding the development, but ACHD did not provide comments or information. The planning director has as mentioned before, the planning director has the authority to waive the requirement for a 5-foot detached sidewalk as long as a 5-foot attached sidewalk is installed. A deviation from a 5-foot attached sidewalk would be a variance and will still need to meet all the findings of approval for a variance. The planning team, as discussed in the initial project report, the planning team was unable to find a hardship with the request to keep the sidewalk and believe that such requests will still be a special privilege, as there are many developments within the same zoning district or across the city that were required to widen an existing sidewalk to meet code.
I'm sorry, Ms. Mbabe. I'm having a hard time hearing you today. So maybe speak a little more slowly on that one, just because you have the mask on. You can leave the mask on, but if you could just repeat that last little bit.
Yeah. So I was saying that the planning team was unable to. Do you want me to start from the beginning of the slide?
No, just no, I
very-
got the first part.
Okay.
And so I got the part about the planning director has approved a 5-foot, but I wasn't sure what you said after that.
Yeah, so the planning director was unable to find a hardship with the request to keep the existing sidewalk, attached sidewalk on Everett Street. And believes that such request will constitute a special privilege. As there are many developments across the city or within the same zoning district that were required to widen an existing sidewalk to meet code.
Okay,
A 5 foot sidewalk is usually preferred as it is wide enough to accommodate 2 people walking side by side. It is also ADA and PROAG compliant. ACHD and the city have also been requiring a minimum of 5 foot sidewalks across the city when sidewalks have been deemed necessary. So therefore, a condition of approval has been included to require the sidewalk to be widened to 5 feet.
okay. And Everett is the skinny side, correct?
Yes.
Okay.
The planning team has found that 2 of the variance requests meet the criteria for approval, while 2 requests do not meet any of the approval criteria. In conclusion, the planning team recommends approval of the variances to encroach into the street side setback and to deviate from the parking and back of space standards. The planning team recommends denial of the variances to encroach into the interior side setback and to deviate from installing a detached sidewalk. Here are the findings of approval for each variance. Thank you, and I'll stand by any questions you may have.
Thank you. I asked my questions already. I appreciate it. And thank you for repeating. Sorry, I had to slow you down again on that. All right, we will now hear from the applicant. And please state your name and address for the record.
My name is Ann Elmore, 110 Labrador Lane, Bellevue, Idaho. This is my husband Roger and my daughter Marnie. And then we have one other team member, Kyle, who's on Zoom. He could not attend today, and he's the one that drove our plans. If you
Okay.
have questions about that. Okay. This is our project. Our plan is to build a small residence, convert the existing dwelling into an art studio, and landscape the lot to fit in with the surrounding neighborhood. Okay. Okay, go next. Yes, great. Okay, this is just a table of contents of our report. We're very interested in the property, and so we researched the ownership of the property, and you can see that it was platted. We've seen different things in 1910 or 1912. Gertrude Berry lived there for over 30 years, and Laura Walters lived there for over 50 years. This property was annexed into from Ada County into the city. And so that is why it was built without any building or zoning requirements.
This is fun. Keep on going.
Okay.
Thank you.
I'm a retired teacher. One thing I think is interesting about this slide is that if you look at the Lamberton's addition and you see how skinny those lots are compared to the rest of the map. So our property sits at the corner of Hartman and Everett Streets in the Winstead Park neighborhood of the city of Boise. It is 25 feet wide and 122 feet long. It's bordered on the east side by a residence and the south side by an alley. There's an original structure. It's 400-foot structure, but it also has a little addition that makes it 536. And it was built in 1916. And we intend to develop the residence into an art studio. And that's our site plan. And these are the 3 variances we've requested: the setbacks, the driveway, and the sidewalks. Pardon me? Okay. Well, as people have said before, we've requested a 4-foot on the east side and a 4-foot on the west side. And the 4-foot on the west side would make it even with the existing structure. And the 4-foot on the east side, we worked with the adjacent neighbor and it seemed to be a good number for all of us. Anyway, that's what we agreed upon. They have talked about the driveway, how we have 40 feet and we need 42. And so if we could get that approved, then we have space for our driveway. The sidewalks seems to be a big issue. The hardship is the dimensions of the lot. The zoning requirement for placement of detached sidewalk would be in the right of way along Hartman and Everett. It would be inconsistent with the other attached sidewalks. Placing it 4 feet close to both structures compromises safety, privacy, and impacts the quiet enjoyment of the property. So you can see where we put the stakes out, how close that sidewalk would be to my daughter's windows, basically. And here's another view of that. The city has talked about this north sidewalk, and so here's a picture of it, and here's kind of a diagram. And originally they wanted us to tear up the old sidewalk and put a new one in that was detached, and then it would either run straight into our neighbor Nikki's yard, or you'd have to put a jog or an elbow in there. I looked at the code, I couldn't find anything that talked about existing sidewalks. And so we thought that remedy was making the problem worse than what's there. ACHD, the next slide says, well, in 2 more slides. Well, hang on. Oh, there it goes. Okay. This is what ACHD said. I don't believe ACHD can be supportive of detached sidewalk on Everett Street, as there is already existing sidewalk, attached sidewalk, and the site has limited frontage on Everett. So it may be infeasible to construct detached sidewalk. So we agreed with their decision. In the memo from City of Boise, it says, as such, the subject application has been modified to remove the variance request. And we did not request or approve of the modification. We would like the variance approved as originally submitted. And we oppose the 1-foot sidewalk addition. Here's some rough diagrams of what the sidewalk might look like if you kept an attached sidewalk, if you had an attached with a detached. And no one has explained to us how this would look or function. The zoning requirement of detached sidewalks results in sidewalks going to and from nowhere. The picture on the top is the property directly across from the property on the north. So this is Everett Street. And so if that property had to have a detached sidewalk, it would be on the left there where those 2 big trees are and possibly run into the house. And then the one on the south side across the alley, they face Hartman. And so if they had a detached sidewalk, it would run right through the middle of their front yard, very close to their front door. Here's some other neighborhood pictures of houses that all have no sidewalks or attached sidewalks. Our variance request and preference is for no additional sidewalk, but as a compromise, we would consider putting an attached sidewalk on there. It would be about 88 feet. And these are some letters of support. After speaking with Ann and Roger, I can say that I'm excited for their plans for the lot. They put a lot of thought and care into making the most out of the space they were given. While their plans include 3 variances from the new code, I believe all of them are justifiable. For this property, the ask to forego the sidewalk makes sense for the neighborhood. I have reviewed these plans and variance requests and believe them to be the kind of refinement that specific property at 1714 North Hartman needs terribly. I respectfully request that the Planning and Development Services approve these upgrades to assist in the furtherance of the positive direction of this neighborhood and the West Bench area at large. The variances requested by the Elmore family completely makes sense for this lot size and location. Their proposed new building aligns with the existing grandfathered home that is already there and would bring a positive infusion of revitalization that this neighborhood inevitably needs. These are some concepts of what the exterior of the house would look like. Marnie has lived in Boise for over 10 years and is excited to call the property and house on Hartman Street her home. We sincerely thank you for your time and honest consideration of our project.
Thank you. That was a very well put together presentation by a homeowner. I appreciate that. All right, we will move on to the rest of the public hearing. Is there anyone representing the neighborhood association? I see no hands.
I contacted the neighborhood association. They said they could not render an opinion without a public.
Okay, this is a public meeting, but they're not here, so we'll just move on. And we'll now open the public hearing, starting with the sign up sheet. And I have a Michael. Is that, there's you found someone. If you could state your name and address for the record.
Thank you. My name is Michael Cordell. My home is at 6315 West Everett Street, Boise, 83704, approximately 6 or 8 doors down from this property,
Okay,
down Everett Street to the west.
maybe staff can pull up a. Maybe not.
Is this
Ms.
taking?
Canning,
my
I'm not-
time? Am I
I'm not
taking
sure
my
we
time?
have a map that would show exactly
Okay.
something like that.
Do you live up the street
Yeah, I live
from?
up the street on
Okay.
Everett Street. And I bought my home in 1992, and I will tell you, in all honesty, this particular property has been at times a pathetic eyesore, and at other times just an eyesore. I really welcome the Elmore's input into our neighborhood. It'll make it a lot nicer place to live and pass by all the time. I think they have a great plan, and I know that they will be great neighbors. I think it's arbitrary and draconian for ACHD or whoever to insist on bisecting their property with this setback sidewalk, particularly in light of the fact that so many sidewalks in our neighborhood are right adjacent to the curb. It doesn't make sense that they can't have a variance that would allow that. In the particular case of this super thin, narrow lot, and it will enhance the neighborhood significantly. I'd like to just, really reiterate that this will be a great addition to our neighborhood. The people that lived behind me sold their home, and a developer put an infill house on their driveway. There's been all kinds of infill homes, sort of gentrifying our neighborhood. And as a long-term member of this neighborhood, I certainly do approve of the fact that those guys want to improve this site significantly. And I think it's draconian and just kind of ridiculous to make them bisect that lot with a sidewalk.
Thank you.
Okay.
All right. And now, is there anyone that wishes to testify that was not on the sign up sheet? There's no hand, seeing no hands, I'll move on. Is there anyone online that wishes to testify?
Ms. Canning, we do have Kyle Belinsky who just raised his hand and should be able to speak now.
Okay.
Hello, Ms. Canning, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Okay, thank you. My name is Kyle Belinsky. I live at 417 North Atlantic Street in Boise. And I thank you for letting me speak today on behalf of Marnie and Ann and Roger Elmore. I helped in the design process. as well as the research work needed for the legal non-conforming status application that they were asked to complete prior to this variance application process. Just to kind of recap, this is an old legal platted lot with a dwelling on it. We are not demolishing this historic 1916 dwelling, but rather finding a new use for it as a detached garage studio space and building a newer house beside it. The land use has not changed at all. It is a small platted single family dwelling lot. We're technically only adding a garage. This is not a development so much as it is a continued, principally permitted use with modern zoning code setback constraints. We've not gained anything from a development perspective, such as a rezone or a two-lot subdivision where we'd make financial gains. This is an affordable lot for Marnie to build a small 2-bedroom, 2-bath home in a neighborhood she loves. I hope you'll consider the special constraints that this parcel presents and that we've worked very hard to make the best of a very challenging lot. A corner lot, excuse me, to boot, which are always more challenging. We've also worked hard to be a good neighbor with the contiguous neighbor to the east, Nikki. I hope you've been able to read her full letter, as well as the other letters in support of this project, which is what I believe every community and planning department would hope for in higher density subdivisions, to be considerate and kind and actively work with existing neighbors. I believe there to be ample justification for the setback variances and attached sidewalks to be approved, as everything about this lot requires one to look at it uniquely and not to try and group it together with standard lots or standard blanket requirements in the zoning code. I also talked to ACHD several times, and if you had questions about anything that I spoke to them with about, I'd be happy to answer any questions about that. Thank you.
I do have a few questions for you. I just want to verify the 4'6" was the measurement from the existing home to the fence line, I presume?
Yeah, GIS shows the tooling shows it to be roughly 5 feet, but because this is such a small lot, 25 feet, we went out and remeasured several times, and 4'6" was what we came up with, and we took great care at measuring it accurately to the best of our ability.
Okay, that's kind of the information I was looking for, and so you were able to kind of find the extent of the lot, and then the extra right of way, and those numbers kind of added up and made sense to you?
Yeah, and I work for the unincorporated Ada County, and I have the tooling like the city of Boise does for the GIS, and it's to some degree it's pretty close, but it's not 100%. So getting out there in person several times to remeasure and to go off of the existing lot was what we had to do. Also, on an old lot like this, you'd be up a hill to even find property pins for something like this. So oftentimes it's existing fences or structures or things in the neighborhood. So we did our best to be to that 4'6" was the best we could do and the most accurate.
Okay, great. Thank you. I appreciate that information.
Yeah, thank you.
All right. I believe that's everyone. Okay. With that, I will provide some comments, and you have the opportunity to rebut those. So I think what we're going to do is go through them one by one, and we can just have a conversation up at the podium, and just that'll probably be the easiest, rather than trying to separating them out. We all thought agreed would be better. All right. So let's start with the Everett Street. With regard to Everett Street, you were lucky that you got the memo from ACHD that you did, and their support. I think that gives you cause or supports your request for a variance there, and that they're not asking for the detached sidewalk. And I think part of that's just so that they can have a safe pedestrian ramp going from that corner. That's what I suspect anyway, but it will need to be 5 feet. So we'll just go with the director's determination and on that one, but it will need to be 5 feet. Okay?
Okay.
Okay. Is that the way you want to do it, Mr. Holmes, or do you want me just to include it in the variance?
I'm scanning, that's actually the way that the recommended conditions
Okay.
of approval speak to right
Okay.
now. So that
So we're
one
gonna
is covered.
Approve that at 5 feet.
Yep, we got that
Okay.
one covered.
And so let's move on to the next one.
Which one would you want?
Whichever one you have up next is fine. The sidewalk variance here, I am, this is the one where you don't want to do the detached sidewalk on this one. Given that it's going to be in the public right of way, that sidewalk to me needs to meet code. And again, unfortunately, you heard my lecture, if nothing else, on detached sidewalks and how prevalent it is in the code. It's clearly intended to be gotten in piecemeal fashion. It impacts every single infill project, every single rebuild project pretty much going on in the city right now. That one, unfortunately, it does bring those sidewalks close to the home, but I am not going in favor of approving that one. Do you want to? It's your chance to rebut. Right now, I think you
Well,
just
I have
want
a statement, I guess.
Okay.
I could read, but
Would you just rather say it at the end, or?
what, oh. Why don't you talk about the setbacks and then maybe we can come back to the
Okay,
sidewalk.
sure. The interior side setback, I am, I kept on asking about the 4'6" because you do have a very constrained lot. There's no doubt about it. Trying to meet all those all those setbacks, especially the street side setback, is very difficult on that property. Because you have the existing dwelling that's at 4'6", I'm willing to give you a little variance from, it's kind of splitting the difference. I'm willing to let you continue that 4'6". So instead of the 5 that staff is asking for now, I think we'll go with the 4'6" so that you can line up with that existing structure.
Okay.
And then on the street side setback, I am in favor of, again, lining up with the existing home so that you can have a 4-foot setback there. So I approve that variance for you, as well as the backup space. Again, that, to me, the existing home is a big part of your hardship, and I love that you're keeping it. So I approve of that backup space variance as well.
Okay. So I can make a comment.
Yes,
and then
you
I
may.
can- And then can I read a page? Is that, do I have to
Sure.
do that? Okay. After this hearing, we'll have to go back and decide what we're going to do. And we could build the property and make the sidewalk like you ask. Or we could say, we don't want a sidewalk 4 feet from my daughter's windows. And we could let the property go undeveloped, which doesn't help the city of Boise and doesn't help the neighborhood. Or we could sell it and whoever buys it will tear down that historic property and they'll build some long skinny duplex and have a detached sidewalk, and the city of Boise will be so happy because it meets their code. And it just is so sad. So we are just little people in this trying to do one little lot for our daughter. And this problem is way bigger than me. And I just can't believe the city of Boise is putting people in this position. So if with your permission, respectfully, I'll read my last statement and then you make your decision. And it is what it is.
I appreciate that. And then I understand and I'm empathetic as well, but please
Yeah.
go ahead.
And just, and the 5 foot versus the 4 foot. I mean, that's going to be ugly. You had a 4 foot sidewalk that was there, and then you don't think you're going to be able to tell that 1 foot is added to it. But I'm just through my statement and then we'll move on. Okay, this is what I believe, and we believe. The hardship is this lot is old. It was platted in 1912. The hardship is this lot is narrow, 25 by 122 feet. According to ACHD, both Everett Street and Hartman are low volume neighborhood streets. ACHD is supportive of keeping the existing sidewalk on Everett. The detached sidewalk on Hartman will not be easily joined to Everett. This is a sidewalk to and from nowhere. No adjacent neighbors have sidewalks to connect to, attached or detached. The connectivity in the code does not match the reality on the ground. Many, if not all of these properties have hardships and or circumstances with their sites that prevent them from connectivity now and in the future. All of these properties are imperfect. Detached sidewalks for every property is not a guarantee. This is important because connectivity will not be uniform. It will be hit and miss, non-conformity versus conformity. Because of the way this area was developed and annexed into the city, the lots do not conform to current city code. Sidewalks do not exist. Fences are in the right-of-way, and lots continue to be long and narrow. The house directly to the west has a fence 40 inches from the curb. This house is in the right-of-way. The house directly to the north has 2 immense trees in the right-of-way, and the house is in the right-of-way too. The house directly to the south is facing Hartman, and a detached sidewalk would run right by its front door. The granting of this variance will not provide a right or special privilege to the property that is not available to other properties. All of these residents have the same variance process available to them. All of these lots have site conditions, utility conditions, and other circumstances that make the provision of detached sidewalks impracticable. That's straight out of the code. Finally, there are real safety concerns we have with a public sidewalk being just 4 feet away from both structures. Would you want sidewalks that close to your residence where people could easily look into your house? It impacts the quiet enjoyment of the property and is unsafe. Those are direct quotes from the variance application. We are asking for a practical, common sense solution. We thank you again for your time and honest consideration. You don't know us, but we will be good stewards of this property. We feel that we need these variances in order to maximize the potential of the lot and make this family project work for us. As described in the letters of support for our project, the neighbors and neighborhood would like to see something done. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. And my hope is that maybe staff can get some of those comments up to those folks that are considering code changes and let them know, because I think that it's a very real feeling. I'm sure the previous applicant had many of the same thoughts, and it's those are good and valid points, and thank you for bringing them up. Okay, with that, I will close the public hearing. And let's see. So I would go ahead and go back to the last one. Thank you. Consistent with the staff report, I am recommending approval of the street side encroachment and the deviation from parking and backup space requirements. I'm also recommending approval of, or not recommending, I'm also approving the attached sidewalk along Hartman Street at 5 feet. And I am allowing a small interior side setback encroachment of 1/2 foot to be line up with the existing home. And if you want to go to the next slide, I'm sorry, the one with the findings for variance. So there is an undue hardship on because of the characteristics of the site, not just the shape of the site, but also the existing home.
And Ms. Canning, I'm sorry, I think the one that we did not get
Oh,
from
I
you is
missed one.
the detached sidewalk along Hartman.
Oh,
Okay,
I am not approving the variance for the construction of an attached sidewalk on Hartman.
Thank you.
And the interior side setback with the new measurements.
The interior side setback encroachment, I am allowing at 4.5 feet. So a 1/2 foot of an encroachment. Okay. So there are undue hardships of the site, not just the size of the site, but also the existing home and also the abundance of extra right of way as well, which is a considering factor. I don't believe it will conflict with the public interest, and I'm sure that staff covered that well in the staff report, nor will it grant a right or special privilege. So I think probably the staff report covers all that we need. Okay. All right. With that, we will adjourn. Thank you all so much for coming. I do appreciate your comments. And I hope you're able to move forward with the project.